I'm willing to bet that most British people are familiar with the sight, sound, and wonderful smell of one of these things. The good old fish and chip shop, commonly known as a chippy. Not every town or village has one of these things, but a lot do, and you can guarantee no matter where it is, it'll do a roaring trade. When you think of typical British cuisine, fish and chips always ranks as one of our most popular dishes. Most chippies serve other stuff too, like sausages, both plain and battered, perhaps a selection of hot pies, and sauces such as curry, which is the nation's favourite. Unless you're from Yorkshire, where it's almost considered a crime to not drench chips in gravy. So how did something so simple get so popular? Why do chippies up and down the nation do such a good job of feeding the masses? Today, there's about 10,000 chippies in the UK. There were once a lot more. They first appeared in the 1860s, and by 1910 there were over 25,000. There were over 35,000 by the 1930s. The tradition of eating fish battered and fried in oil isn't actually British though. It's not known for certain, but food boffins reckon it may have been introduced to the country by Spanish and Portuguese Jews who lived in the Netherlands before settling in the UK. These immigrants arrived as early as the 16th century, but a lot landed en masse in London during the 1850s. They prepared fried fish in a manner similar to pescado frito, which is coated in flour then fried in oil. When this began in the UK, again nobody knows, but Charles Dickens gives us a clue in Oliver Twist. In it, he mentions fried fish warehouses, so there are hints as to its existence in, or perhaps before, the early 19th century. The potato came to the British Isles in the 16th century. While there's an ongoing dispute between France and Belgium about where fries were invented, fried potato chips have long been popular in England. Again, Dickens is our friend for those two. He was the first man to mention in writing the word chips when referring to slices of potato. He did so in 1859's A Tale of Two Cities, referring to them as husky chips of potato fried with some reluctant drops of oil. Fish and chips was first popularised by the Industrial Revolution. It became a stock meal among the working class in England as a consequence of the rapid development of trawler fishing in the North Sea and the development of the railways. Combined, fish could quickly and easily be transported to the majorly industrialised UK cities from the ports where it was landed. The location of the first fish and chip shop, though, is unclear. The earliest known shops were opened in London during the 1860s by the Eastern European Jewish immigrant Joseph Malin and by John Lees in Mossley, Lancashire. However, these might not have been the first shops because the sale of both fried fish and fried chips had existed separately for at least 50 years prior. There is therefore the possibility they could have been combined by someone. But what a combination though. The oldest chippy still in operation in London is the Rock and Soul Place in Covent Garden. Early shops had only very basic facilities. Usually, these consisted principally of a large cauldron of cooking fat heated by a coal fire. I only know of one coal-fired chippy around today, and that's in Upton, West Lindsey, Lincolnshire. Generally, the fish and chip shop later evolved into a fairly standard format, with food served in paper wrappings. It was originally served in old newspapers, but this practice has now largely ceased. It was done to keep costs down for the shops, and thus keep the price of the food low for its customers. The practice survived as late as the 1980s when it was ruled unsafe for food to come into contact with newspaper ink. If your local chippy still serves its food in newspaper, it won't be without a layer of grease-proof paper in between. Mind you, my dad always used to say they tasted better eaten straight out of the newspaper, for some reason. The growth of the takeaway outlets in the UK means that these days burgers, fried chicken, pizza, Indian and Chinese dishes all compete with fried fish. However, the dish is still highly popular, especially at the seaside. Any trip to the British coast isn't complete without fish and chips, in my humble opinion. We can all argue about how they should be consumed, what our favourite sauces are, and the quality of the food from shop to shop, but there can be no denying fish and chips will always be a major part of British culture. And isn't it totally bloody delicious?